The villainous Mr. Negative first had a cameo appearance in the 2007 free comic book day issue of Amazing Spider-Man before making his proper debut in Amazing Spider-Man number 546 at the start of Brand New Day. A detective named Willoughby was hired to deliver a package to Mr. Negative's men. However, the men decided to take the case and get the reward themselves, cutting the detective out of the deal. However, Negative himself showed up, and, displeased by the way his men were conducting business, slaughtered them and paid the detective the money he was owed. Opening the case, Mr. Negative revealed an ancient stone tablet. This was the Tablet of Death and Entropy, similar in origin to the Tablet of Life and Time that was previously seen in Amazing Spider-Man number 68 to 75 in the late 1960s. Discerning the tablet's secrets, Mr. Negative discovered the formula for the Devil's Breath, a deadly gas that would only affect the living relatives of the person whose blood was used to create it. The blood he planned to use was that of Bruno Carnelli, heir apparent to both the Maggia and the Carnelli crime families, and the only blood relative to both. Spider-Man, of course, crashed in while pursuing something unrelated, saved Carnelli, and destroyed the tablet. However, Mr. Negative escaped, having already gathered the necessary ingredients to unleash the Devil's Breath on a meeting of the heads of both families, wiping out most of them. However, one Carnelli, who was secretly adopted into the family, survived, and after Spider-Man figured out what had happened, their surviving mobster begged him to go and protect their wives and their children. Fortunately, Spidey was able to locate the gas canister and launch it far enough away for the women and children to escape. However, Negative had one more trick up his sleeve as he took one child hostage. In exchange for the child's life, Negative demanded enough of Spider-Man's blood to brew another batch of Devil's Breath. Spider-Man agreed since Negative didn't know that Spidey has no living blood relatives. However, Mr. Negative displayed his raw physical strength when he tossed the girl into the river, giving him enough time to escape while Spider-Man rescued her. Then, at the end of that adventure, we learned that Mr. Negative was also secretly Martin Lee, the founder of the homeless shelter and soup kitchen where Spidey's Aunt May volunteered. However, it seems not even Lee himself was aware of his dual identity. In his private office, Lee had a game of Go set up. Every so often, he would make a move with one of the white pieces, and would sometimes find that one of the black pieces had moved in response. Mr. Negative and his gang of inner demons continued to be regular villains in Amazing Spider-Man, demonstrating his ability to corrupt others, bending them to his will, as well as his inner demon's seeming immortality. This is shown in the 3-issue limited series Dark Reign Mr. Negative, which also shed some light on his backstory. Martin Lee was one of 212 illegal Chinese immigrants from the Fujian province stored aboard a ship called the Golden Mountain. The ship was supposed to be met by small boats to pick up the cargo, but it was caught in a storm and received no word from shore. The snakehead in charge of the human smuggling ordered the captain to steer the ship closer to shore so the immigrants could swim for it. The ship ran aground, however, and both the crew and the human cargo fled. Some accidentally swam out to sea, while others didn't have the strength to make it to shore. In the end, only one man survived, Martin Lee. After he got his start working in a clothes shop in Chinatown, Lee slowly built his fortune until he was able to start the Feast Project, a center meant to help the homeless and underprivileged. At least, that was the official story. When ace reporter Betty Brant was ordered to dig up dirt on Martin Lee, she started by looking into his past and found out that he had a wife who for some reason lived alone in an East Broadway apartment. Betty visited Yana Lee, pressing her for information, and learned that while Yana and Martin were barely scraping by in China, their neighbors were living in luxury. Yana came to New York on a student visa to attend Empire State University, staying to work after it ran out, although she hated the city and intended to return to China. Martin, however, didn't trust his wife, and hired a snakehead gang to bring him to America as well. However, Betty revealed that she discovered that entire snakehead gang had been killed and their operations were taken over by Mr. Negative. Upon hearing that, Yana Lee fled. Meanwhile, Mr. Negative was in the midst of a gang war with a villain called the Hood over control of Chinatown. However, Mr. Negative was able to corrupt Spider-Man and use the brainwashed hero to battle the Hood's supervillains. This was until Yana came to Mr. Negative warning that Betty Brant was getting close to the truth. Negative sent the corrupted Spider-Man after Brant and battled the Hood one-on-one. Betty was able to escape and was confronted again by Yana, who explained that she didn't expect Negative to try and kill Brant. She also explained that she owed Mr. Negative her life, for after the Golden Mountain lost its human cargo, the Snakeheads sent agents to collect the money Martin Lee owed them from his wife. Money that she didn't have, and so the Snakeheads intended to make an example of her instead. Fortunately, before they did, Mr. Negative arrived, killing the Snakeheads, and, upon hearing Yana's story, decided to let her live. Years later, Yana saw a man named Martin Lee in the newspaper who claimed to be a survivor of the Golden Mountain. This man, however, was not her husband. This man wasn't the real Martin Lee. We soon learned the reason for this from Mr. Negative himself. He wasn't one of the immigrants being smuggled on board the Golden Mountain. He was the snakehead who commanded the captain to steer the ship into the shallow water at gunpoint. When the ship ran aground, he stole the identity papers from one of the men who died during the journey. Martin Lee. After barely making it to shore as the sole survivor, he tried to meet up with his fellow smugglers in their hideout, only to find them killed by Silvio Manfredi, aka Silvermane, the Don of the Magia. Rather than kill him, Silvermane sent the man to Ellis Island, where he would be used as a test subject for Simon Marshall's synthetic drug. Regular viewers may remember him from our video on the origin of Cloak and Dagger. Sure enough, the same drug responsible for creating those two also transformed the unnamed human trafficker not only into the villainous Mr. Negative, but also the humanitarian who took the name Martin Lee. At the end of all of this, the corrupted Spider-Man found Betty Brant, but due to their long-standing relationship, Spidey was able to regain control and force out Mr. Negative's corrupting influence. Meanwhile, even though the Hood gained the upper hand in his fight with Mr. Negative, Negative blackmailed Norman Osborn into calling off the Hood and escaped to continue his villainy. And so that's the origin of Mr. Negative. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more marvelous content. As always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below, as well as links to my Twitter and Patreon. So until next time, true believers, Excelsior!